So, welcome to another happiness show or class. Let me give you a quick intro. This is a weekly show, happens 7 to 8 p.m. UK time every week. Go to bigquestionsanswer.com for previous shows. This week, the main topic is health, mind, body, and soul. Second half of the show is anything you want, ask anything you want. This week I'm experimenting with no guests, see how it goes, and all the happiness truths I talk about are basically based on science and logic. So hopefully uh, it'll make sense. Let's see what happens. So first thing is I like to break it down into questions. So in terms of mind, why do we struggle with mental health? And the short answer is we are prisoners of people's opinions because we think success means looking important to others. We actually get dopamine highs, that's the happiness chemical, by working towards good goals. That's a very short answer, and I'm going to try to break that down. But I just want to remind people this is a live stream. Feel free to ask questions, disagree, whatever you want in the live chat. And if you don't make it to the live show, you can comment in the not so live chat. I always do reply to that. But anyway, so we are prisoners of people's opinions. Okay. Why are we prisoners? Because we often don't do things we want to do because we're so scared we will look stupid to other people. And that's a very important part of most people's psychology. So most people prefer to be miserable than to stand out. Okay, and we're going to talk about later on the show why and how do we not fall for that trap, but that would be most people. Okay, and one of the ways we can not fall for that trap is to change our view of success. So in modern Western materialistic societies, success is all about getting stuff. And why do we want stuff? Okay, we want stuff to impress people that we don't really care about. We work at jobs we don't care about to get stuff we don't need to impress people we don't care about. And that's a really sad understanding or concept of success, and it traps us because that idea, if you think about success, is not just about things really. Why do we have the things? Is to look like something, to impress people, things we really don't need. And so, if we need to impress people, we're actually trapped or prisoners of their opinion because we might get something really expensive, like a really expensive car, and then we'll go, hopefully, somebody will make a comment about my nice car. We're trapped by that. And what happens if somebody doesn't make a nice comment about your car? Then you have to possibly buy a more expensive car. Yeah, and in fact, you probably will buy a more expensive car if you're dependent on that because you'll get maybe a nice comment, but then you'll get used to those nice comments, few nice comments, or your car gets old, and then need to buy a really expensive car to get more pats on the back. So you really are a prisoner or a slave to people's opinions if that's your view of success. Trying to look more important than people makes you actually a slave to all those people you're trying to become more important to. It's a really sad kind of approach to life as well, just trying to become more important to other people. We don't realize, we don't really word our idea of success in that way. But if you think about the common way of, you know, looking at success in the modern age, it's to become somehow famous. Why? What does famous mean? To become more important than other people. Why do you need to be famous? What value has that? So that people kind of go, oh, you're so great. Great to who? Great to them. Okay. If you were less great than they were, then, you know, they wouldn't think you're so great. So I know it sounds really harsh, but that's what most people's or the common view of success is. And that's why so many people struggle with mental health. They are prisoners of other people's opinions. Okay, so how do you actually get past that? What do you do as a much better alternative? It's to do what psychologists have known for a very long time, actually, but most people don't know. And this is what this show is about, using science and logic to tell you really simple things to improve your mental health and everything to do with your happiness. So we actually get this thing called a rush of dopamine. Dopamine is a chemical, it works in your sort of between your neurotransmitters, very complicated stuff. I don't even know much about it. I'm not a doctor, right? But I learn enough to tell you the basics, right? And it basically fires off this kind of natural high, like a drug high, but it's natural, it's part of your body. And you normally get these highs when you're doing something your body wants you to do, what you're designed to do. So you are actually designed to do good things, but not only do good things, to do things to work towards them. You just get rewarded simply to work towards those good things, even if you don't achieve those good things. So have good aims, basically, and you feel better about it. Um, and so that's an alternative view of success. If your success idea of success is to make things better, you get excited by doing those things. That excitement is the dopamine getting to you. And also, you feel better about yourself as a human being. So there's another element that I didn't really mention in that summary. Okay. And that is psychologists have known that real happiness, lasting happiness, comes from meaning. Now, it's really weird because in modern society, we're told that there is no meaning to life. Okay. And it's kind of like a joke. There's a movie where they say the meaning of life is 42, right? Um, and without meaning, we're really miserable. So do search a book that I keep referring to, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Very important book in terms of psychology, and it talks about listening to your conscience, finding meaning by doing the right thing. Those are the actual things that actually, if anything, makes you feel successful, because success is a very vague word. It's more like a feeling, and you get that feeling most by doing great things. Now, we can get trapped sometimes by you might be doing something good and you say, oh, nobody seems to, pat me on the back. That's a bit of a trap. That's kind of when you're trapped between the two different kinds of success, the success that most people are following, which makes most people miserable. So you don't really want to follow majority. In general, you should really avoid following the majority, because the majority don't know what they're doing. Majority by default is just the way statistics go, it's just the way populations work. Okay. That the majority don't have a clue what they're doing. So you really do want to avoid that and probably go for the minority. Like, what is the minority doing? Let's see what they're doing. That's more interesting and more chance of you being successful. So if you look at something um, like a normal population, it's usually described. I'm trying to draw a bell curve. Do check it up, right? And the people who make all the changes, all the great changes in the world, are like I think 3%. Okay, and then there's a kind of another few up to the 13%, which includes the first 3%, are the people who copy or adopt, that they call the early adopters. Okay, so the first 3% are called the innovators, the next 13, including the first 3%, are called the early adopters, I think. I'm not sure if I got the numbers exactly, but they're really tiny percentage of people who do things differently, and everybody else are just a copycat. So they're copying lots of miserable habits, because you can see, for example, um, uh, what's it called? Suicides are going up and up in the West. It's kind of one of the major causes of death at the moment. We kill ourselves because basically because we're so bad at happiness. So you don't want to copy the majority, because the majority are doing really badly despite having lots of food, and we actually more people are dying from eating too much than too little. So it's not like we don't have enough things. It's just that we don't know how to manage our lives. So that's what one of the probably the key thing that we're suffering from in mental health is we are running towards this idea of success that has the opposite effect of making us happy. Yes, it's the opposite of what we should be doing. We have an idea that we want to look important, we want to get stuff to look important to other people, and we think we will make ourselves more important than them. But what actually happens is we actually become slaves to them because we are slaves to their opinions. So the alternative, in short, is be good. If you're being good, you will love yourself, you become more confident, you will like your life, and you'll have meaning, and it'll be awesome. Okay, and I'll talk about those kind of things a bit more in detail in coming bits of the program. I just want to repeat again, do feel free to ask your questions. Here's the next bit, or comment or whatever, disagree, whatever you feel like. So, why am I fit and unhappy? So these questions, I've really thought about them because I see this all the time. There are a lot of people, especially in London, jogging around, um, and it doesn't really make you much happier. You get a tiny bit of a dopamine rush, that chemical, that happiness chemical again, but it's very short term. It's like there's two ways in which you get a dopamine rush. There's a short term consumerism type, okay, and a bit through exercise. Exercise is good as well, but the long term stuff comes from meaning. But let me just go through this summary of what I think the answer is. Happiness is a way of looking at your life. So people can go through really bad times, but they can still be really happy. So one person could be going. There could be, sorry, two people going through the same situation, and one person looks at it and they are happy about it, and one person looks at that same situation and are miserable about it. So happiness is a way of looking at your life. So it starts in the mind. Health extremists, I describe, okay, become miserable because they obsess more on themselves than others. That's me trying to really summarize what it is that's causing the problem of being fit yet unhappy, which is incredibly common. You will see top athletes. I think the fastest, or the swimmer who got the most gold medals ever, Michael Phelps, was depressed, right? Never mind being super successful and incredibly fit. So definitely being fit does not really make you happy. It's important, but kind of a bit, and there are so many other elements to it. So happiness is a way of looking at life. So it starts from in your mind. So it's not really in your body, it's up here. It does not mean, though, this is the second bit, people go to extremes. Okay, I'll say something like it's in your mind, it's not in your body, therefore they forget their body. Or they say, "Oh, I disagree because I definitely feel happy through my body," and then I'm going to go to the other extreme and forget about all the other elements in my life, like your relationship and the way you approach life, and is there any meaning to your life? They forget about that and they go all the way to the other side and they just focus on themselves. Okay, so this thing about, and the reason why we go to these extremes, well, partly of the reason why we go to the extreme of um, focusing entirely on fitness is because of this kind of side effect of materialism. So, materialism actually makes you really stupid. It makes you think in really obvious terms, like if I buy this, then I'll be happy. But it stops you from thinking deeply about your life, or even questioning how you're feeling really. Okay, so they'll just keep building, abs or muscles and things like that, and improving what's on the outside so that they can show off to people. So materialism is always about showing off. And so you don't want to go to that extreme. That's not going to make you happy. What you need to do, like I keep saying, is finding meaning in your life. So meaning in your life, that probably sounds a bit complicated. That's why I've gone for this other thing, which is people who focus too much on how their bodies look, they are becoming individualists. And what you need to do to be happy is to serve other people. So when I do this show, it's not because I feel I need to do this show. I feel good about this show, even if very few people watch this show, because if I think one or two people are benefiting from these truths that very few people seem to be aware of, then that's fantastic. So I might get like 5 views, 10 views or something on the show, and people might think, why don't you just give up or something? And it's like, no, well, those 5 people are really important. And if it changes their life even a little bit, not completely, um, and they take a slightly better direction in their life, that will have a massive effect. You know, if you like, um, let's say you're playing golf. I don't play golf, but I can imagine this. Okay. And, you know, if you change your direction a little bit, when the ball goes a long way, you can see the overall effect is massive. So if you make a small change in your life, and hopefully this show has that effect some way, and you keep following that small change overall in the wider, the whole span of your life, it will have a massive effect. I hope, I really hope for you. So, happiness is a way of looking at your life. So, it starts off in your mind, not so much in your body. Try to focus on your feelings. Those are the key things. And don't go to the extreme of like either ignoring your body. So, this is another really important thing. So, I do focus on a lot of healthy things. Like I'm fasting at the moment. I think fasting is incredibly good for you, mind, body, and soul. Just for example, when you're not consuming all the time, then you, instead of focusing on consuming, and consuming, by what I mean by consuming is like eating chocolates and things like that and taking in sugars. Why do we take those kind of food in? Is because we're trying to fill a gap in our life. So when you don't do that, you focus more on spirituality when you're fasting, or you think more deeply, and you know, you don't depend on the lower form of dopamine high, which is the consumerism kind of dopamine high. So you could do check out these facts that I'm talking about dopamine and how you get it. I learn a lot from Jordan Peterson, so probably YouTube Jordan Peterson dopamine, and how the two forms of, you know, how you get high and get happy, as it were. So rather than depending too much on the dopamine high of consumerism, you have to then, therefore, because you're not consuming, by consuming food and sugary food and caffeine and chocolate and all that kind of stuff, you end up having to focus more on the dopamine high of achieving great things in your life, and that's the stuff that's lasting. You can imagine that, isn't it? Like, you know, you got to imagine your life was either full of just consuming and eating and whatever and getting stuff, or you, I don't know, you're an Elon Musk and you just achieve amazing things. When you look back at your life, you'll probably be happier that you did something amazing rather than just ate loads of stuff, you know, or played loads of computer games. I'm not sure if that would be such an amazing life. Um, so, yep. What else? So, anyway, reminder, do feel free to comment, disagree, and whatever you want. If not, just enjoy the show. Hope you're learning something. Um, so, what else can I add to this? Because I think this is something that so many people are suffering from. So, why do people? So, a lot of people do. Not, I would say, grow up. So a lot of people stay stuck on this idea of their physical appearance. This is something when you're young, this is something you might feel that you value because you're growing up and your body's changing and you're thinking, yes, I wish I had. I remember a lot of my students, they say they want a beard or something, right? That's one of their goals in life. So some of my younger students or teenage students, they want to look like men and they want to have muscles and things like that. And that's what you tend to focus on when you don't have much else. So when you're like more accomplished, say, you can't imagine, let's say, Elon Musk, who's really smart and making rockets and things, he would go like, "Oh, check me out, check my muscles out." Like that's one of his lesser achievements, and people wouldn't be too impressed by that either. Like they look at my abs, they'll be like, "Okay, I don't care. I'm more impressed by the rockets you're sending off to Mars or something," or you're saving the environment by creating these electric cars and things, and all sorts of other amazing things. Um, so sometimes and often people get stuck on the fitness side of things because they're not developing themselves. Um, and you will find people who focus on just their physical health, although it is important to keep that. As I say, I do focus on my physical health as well, do bits of exercise, go for walks and things like that. That's a tiny part of it, and if you focus just on the physical, you're not really developing to your full potential because it's only a limited dimension. Yeah, your mind takes you to whole huge and other levels and dimensions of experience, amazing experiences. Anyway, and the last bit, the soul bit, that something that I think people are quite confused about. What is this soul business? So let's talk about that for a little bit. Oh, I think I copied something wrong. Let me just see. Um, hmm, oh, okay. That's all it is. Let's get rid of the extra space. Oh, have I got too many spaces? Oh, that's better. All right, cool. So, um, why should spirituality affect happiness? So here's a quick and simple answer. So you got two kinds of spirituality that people used to, one in religion and one from what people called what was it word? Not organized religion? Disorganized religion? Disorganized? I can't remember what the word is, but it's quite good. I quite like to have the wrong words because there's like, oh, they don't like organized religion, which is quite funny actually if you think about it. They prefer disorganized something when they say no, no, no. I just like to be in control of my own, you know, direction in life, which is fine. We'll talk about that in a second. But religion. So I'm going to talk about the two kinds of spirituality and the benefits, okay, of those two kinds. Religion just teaches kindness. Okay, when I say religion, I'm talking about the original teachings of religions, because there's a lot of corruption and things in religion over time. These religions have been around for thousands of years sometimes, and some of them don't quite, aren't quite as pristine as they you know, as they were right in the beginning. But anyway, religion, original teachings of religion is just kindness. So if you think about Christianity and Islam and Judaism, they all talk about things like being kind to your neighbors, right? It's really important in those religions. Non-religious, so and as I say, when you do are kind, you find happiness. And this has been shown so many times in so many social experiments. Like, for example, there's a great TED talk about how you can buy happiness. And it says if you buy stuff for other people, you're happier. And it shouldn't actually be surprising because, like, the experiment they had it, for example, one of the experiments they did was buying coffee. Like, there's only so much coffee you need, and it's not like you've never had coffee before. I'm sure if you're watching, you probably had lots of coffee before, unless you're really small or something, like young or something. But so having more coffee or buying more coffee for yourself is not going to make you desperately happy. But especially in Western societies where people are not connected, doing something weird like buying coffee for a stranger, that's a novel experience. And that's and you might know this already, but connection is incredibly important to human beings for the happiness. One of the key things you need. When I say connection, that means relationships. And the idea of connection is not just talking at each other. It's like getting to know each other, knowing each other, being aware of each other. That's the idea behind this word of connection. Okay, so you can really have an amazing connection by doing something for a total stranger, and they'll be like so impressed, and you have a little conversation, why are you doing it, and all this kind of stuff, right? So you get that connection, and that's desperately missing in Western societies, so much so that the biggest killer, can you believe it, in Western societies is loneliness. I think it is, or pretty much one of the biggest killers. So you might say, how can loneliness possibly kill you? Well, loneliness causes all sorts of things like isolation, where you feel like you're by yourself, and then you've got nobody to talk to when you're in a stressful situation, and so stress becomes worse. So there's a lot of reasons why loneliness is the biggest killer. It has a lot of side effects. It's not directly, yeah, that loneliness kills you, but loneliness means makes you feel alone and you're by yourself in the world. And for human beings, that's a massive big deal. You're right. Just feeling alone is a terrible, terrible feeling. So yeah, being kind leads to happiness. And now, moving on to non religious spirituality, it only gives short term happiness. And see, people might be going, no, I've done meditation and it makes me feel really good and whatever. Meditation just makes you relax for a little bit, stops, and relatively compared to not meditating, yes, it can have a massive effect. Okay, if you give yourself a break, okay, and think about the universe you're in and feel a bit grateful, yes, that's going to have some effect. But most of non-religious spirituality is based is it teaches things that are popular for what is already a sick society, I would describe. And when I say sick, it's sick in the sense that it's focused on the individual. And if you're focused on the individual rather than society, then you're bound to be miserable. Because as I just said, what makes us happy is being connected. So if you're focused on yourself and sort of as a result ignoring other people, you're going to be miserable, right? And so that's what these new age kind of spirituality businesses really are based on. They're just telling you things that you already like. And if you're already doing the wrong things and it's telling you more of it, it's not particularly going to make you happy. Now, obviously, they're going to tell you something that makes you a little bit happier than you are. But I look at like most Buddhists I know, these Western Buddhists, they tend not to be happy at all. They seem to still have loads of problems because I'll give you an example. All these new age spiritual teachings, they focus on you and not being of service to other people. I've hardly ever seen, say, a Buddhist quote where they'll say serve other people, be nice to other people. In fact, all the Buddhist quotes, and this is another interesting thing, you hardly ever see a quote, a Buddhist, so-called Buddhist quote, on Facebook and all these other social media, okay, that actually from Buddha. Now, I believe in Buddha. I consider him a prophet, right? Okay, so if you follow his teachings, you do well for yourself. But you hardly ever see teachings from him, or even the Dalai Lama. Dalai Lama is like famous for saying, "I don't know," which is not particularly helpful. Apparently, it's supposed to be cool by not knowing stuff. But anyway, and he'll make fart sounds and stuff like that. I'm sure there's good things about him as well, right? I do like that he's got very simple clothes. That's a really cool thing, because he's not focusing in that sense on the material, and that helps you by itself. But um, a lot of it is like living in the now and ignore people if they're toxic, and that kind of thing. But if you the problem with ignoring people because that person is toxic is not realizing that you are faulty as well. And what you should do is realize why all these other people are so-called toxic and try to work with them. Because if you see everybody as toxic, then you'll be left by yourself. And that's what's this kind of new age spiritual philosophy is leading to: more and more loneliness, more and more misery, actually. So I wouldn't recommend new age spirituality most of the time, because it's just pandering to the problems of you know modern selfish societies, individualistic societies. So It's about kindness to yourself rather than to others. And kindness to others is incredibly important if you want to get out of your tiny shell that's making you miserable. People live in a tiny, tiny, increasingly tiny worlds of, you know, watching Netflix and things like that, and they're left alone. Not a good idea. Um, so spirituality, listen to religion, and it's always giving you simple solutions like be nice to other people. Okay. Right, so we're on the second half. Just as a reminder, feel free to, ask your questions, but I've got a couple of questions lined up. Um, and so these questions I've got from a movie, I think it was called Sunshine from a Spotless Mind or something. Jim Carrey, you probably know the title better than I do. But I liked the movie because it was very honest. It would say all sorts of things, and as movies often do, good movies, they point out all sorts of issues in modern society that we won't say directly ourselves, like why is my life so boring? But if I talk to most people, they're not particularly excited about their lives. I say, what are you doing that's creative or interesting? And they'll say, same old. Okay, so that's kind of a bit of the background to the movie, I mean, to the question. And yes, in the movie, Jim Carrey, the main character, basically feels shy of talking to anybody or having a relationship with anybody because he thinks he's got nothing to share with other people because his life is so miserable or boring. It's just go to work, go to sleep, repeat sort of thing. Okay, so why is my life so boring? A simple solution or answer is life becomes fun when you realize happiness is in doing good things. Okay, good actions lead to more confidence as your conscience begins to like you. So the conscience is not some airy fairy thing. This is something psychologists, all the way from Freud to Viktor Frankl and all these people, have long known about, but most people don't. Okay, the conscience is a very real thing, and but it is yet a mysterious thing. So Freud and some others talk about the conscience as this sort of weird person. They call it a personality because it's got a sort of a mind of its own. So you do something bad, and ideally you want to get away with that bad thing if no police officers noticed you doing that bad thing. But your conscience will still tell you off, even though it's in your mind is working against you when you do naughty things. And when you do good things, it rewards you. So yeah, yeah, you're a good guy. Obviously, you don't hear those words exactly, but you feel it. Like there's the old saying, how do you sleep at night? That phrase comes when you feel bad about doing something so bad that you can't sleep well at night. So that's how your conscience basically talks to you. So good actions lead to more confidence as your conscience begins to like you. So if you got bad chatter, as it were, from your conscience, then you're not really going to have much confidence because you don't feel good about yourself. You just can't feel good about yourself when you're doing bad things. But when you're doing good things, your conscience is telling you good things about yourself. It's telling you good stories about who you are. It's like you're a good guy. You want to make a difference to the world, make the world a better place. And then you feel good about yourself, and then you feel confident. Okay, so confidence should not be artificially manufactured. Yeah, so a lot of people say fake it till you make it and all this kind of stuff. You can't fake it because you can't trick yourself. Um, so if you want to feel confident, just be a good person. So, good actions lead to more confidence as your conscience begins to like you, allowing you to ignore the naysayers. Okay, so if you want to do something interesting in your life, one of the biggest restrictions people have is other people's opinions. Again, we were talking about that earlier on, right? Okay, but you kind of stop caring about other people's opinions if you've got enough confidence. And so confidence comes from knowing having a clear direction in your life and why you're doing it. So, and then you will notice other people, most of the people won't have much direction in life, and you find taking much note you won't really take much notice of what they've got to say, because they're kind of lost, and you don't really care about what they've got to say because they're not particularly happy. They're not having exciting lives, so why would you care about what they've got to say? um so yeah, and you only get that when you're doing good things. You've got a positive direction, a meaningful direction that you can really feel like you can stand behind, as it were. Yeah. And then you just go for it, and those good things, um first of all, you know make you confident, so you're not you know, restricted or controlled by other people's opinions, the naysayers, the people who say you can't do it, you shouldn't do it, and all this kind of stuff. Okay. Okay. And so they stop you from doing fun things, and then you end up doing those fun things because now you've got the confidence. And then positivity, that sort of positivity leads to adventures. I kind of summarized this last comment, which about positivity leads to adventures. What happens when you take positive action? What happens? You learn from those positive actions. When you don't take positive actions, you stay in a tiny little bubble, right? So when you take positive actions, your horizons, your world view enlarges, right? And you take these risks, and it's not such a big risk, because if you fail, you know why you're doing it. So it doesn't really matter that you failed. There's no such thing as failure if you're doing a good thing, right? Okay, so your worldview enlarges, you're learning more stuff, you become more capable, you start meeting more positive people, and positive people actually encourage each other. That's what positive people are like. They help each other. That's what it means. So when you're helping each other and you're working, with other people who want you to do well, then you're going to do better off. And when you know more stuff, you're more capable. And it's kind of like it's just like a positive feedback loop, right? Good things lead to more good things, and those, when you become more powerful, you're more capable of doing more interesting things. So in the beginning, when you do a small positive action, you get rewarded for that. You've experienced a new thing. But if you keep doing that over a long period of time, lots of good things, um, you increasingly become more capable of doing more amazing things, like sending rockets off to space, and uh, creating, electric cars and things like that. You won't be able to do that in the beginning, because you start off from a small bubble. But then, as you take more risks and do more good things, then the horizons, your possibilities increase, and an amazing life starts to unfold. Life, the world is an amazing place. It's There's so much potential, so many problems to solve. The fact that, yes, sure, there's an environmental crisis, but that's an opportunity to solve it. Like Mr. Elon is doing as best as he can, and loads of other people. I do use Elon as a simple example because he's just the richest person in the world and simple to understand, right? Big things are simple to understand. But there are so many other amazing things people are doing. There's a group of people out there making robots that go around the sea and collecting all the rubbish, and they're quite a young little group. And loads of people are supporting them. See, if you can't do the thing yourself, support the people who are doing the things, amazing things, right? There's all this different levels of positivity you can get yourself involved in, and then feel good about yourself. And then your life won't be so boring. If you're not saving the world, you might be helping saving the world by funding it or something. And that's a little bit interesting. You can tell your friends about that. I'm doing this, you know this is what I invested in, or something, in this Kickstarter or whatever it is, right? So yeah, and then you meet more people, new things happen, good things happen, as a result of meeting those new people. And yeah, it's so exciting when you meet those new people. Also, um, you hear about new possibilities, new things you could be doing in your life, maybe go to new places, um, and what you thought when so in the beginning you might think there's hardly any possibilities, but as your view increases you see millions of possibilities of what you can do with your life. And that only really happens, I've seen the people I know, when you just do positive things. And the people who don't do positive things usually are really kind of negative about the opportunities. They don't see opportunities, so that's because they've kept their world tiny because they want to believe they are right. And that's a really negative attitude, to think you're right in the beginning. Should keep learning. Anyway, next, again, another thing from that movie. I really should remember what that movie is called. Something about spotless mind. Let me just check it out. Sunshine, spotless mind. The eternal sunshine of the spotless mind. Okay, so the idea that, well, I'm not going to explain the movie basically. But again, the main character, one of the things he says is, I can't make eye contact. So how can I form relationships with people and things like that? Okay, and it doesn't have to be a romantic relationship, it could be any sort of relationship. And why? One of the reasons, this is not just something in the movie at all. This is something you find in London. People really avoid making eye contact. And it's so sad, especially when you're right in front of somebody on a packed train, and you're looking every other direction so that you don't make eye contact. And even on the streets, it's quite sad that you might be going past a neighbor and you can't make eye contact. So you might say, what's the big deal? Um, let me give a little bit of a summary here. Not doing good things makes your conscience hate you, right? So it all begins with doing good things, right? And if you don't do good things, we talked about this a little bit before, your conscience is always there to judge you. You can't avoid it. And it will hate you for not being a good person. It's an amazing little, it's a very mysterious little thing, this conscience. But anyway, it's mysterious that it knows what's right and wrong and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, so when you don't have, when your conscience is hating on you, that's going to knock your confidence. And therefore, if you're not confident, you're naturally going to struggle with making eye contact with people at all. Do you, you know, you don't feel good about yourself and you don't want people to notice you, and therefore you won't make eye contact basically. And so society also, the double problem is society is sick, as I mentioned before, with individualism. I would say individualism is a sickness, right? Okay, because it keeps you separate from other people, that way of thinking. So people think they're happier being strangers when they're not. So individualism in society makes you feel that the philosophy of life is to get stuff. That's all it is. Life is about getting stuff, and you can be quite happy being by yourself. And that's completely wrong. It's the opposite of what makes people happy. So once you buy into that idea, then when you ignore a person, you don't make eye contact with the person you're going past, you think, it doesn't matter, right? Because your level of perception has been dumbed down by materialism. You've been told, you've been advertised to your whole life that if you get this thing, you'll be happy. And you've totally ignored, because you've been focused on all the silly things that people have been advertising in front of your face. You've totally forgotten the thing that really makes you happy, all the subtle small thing, which is somebody just smiles at you. You won't believe it, but first of all, that's part of psychology. Yeah, smiling, just smiling, a fake smile even makes you happy. But if you smile at somebody else and make them feel good, you feel good about that as well. But that's a whole different. You can actually transfer smiles to people. Like if I smile at you, then you naturally will mimic it. It's just how human beings work. For whatever reason, they mimic it, and then when you copy that smile, you feel good because smiling itself, that facial expression actually makes you happy. Anyway, that's a bit of a side thing. So the reason, in short, why you can't make eye contact is because you don't like yourself. You don't like yourself often because you're being selfish. You're not trying to make the world a better place enough, uh, within your capacity. You might be doing a few good things here and there, but you definitely, if you're capable of doing loads more and you're not meeting anywhere near that capability, like you're giving 1p when you got £1 million, then you're not really going to appreciate yourself. Like, you give 1p when you got £1 million, how can you possibly feel good about that, right? And in a similar way, in a more subtle way, like if you could be good to people and you only spend like 1% of your time being good to people, then you're just not going to like yourself. Yeah. And think about, if you start, you do have some sort of people, even if they don't admit it, they have some sort of reflection on their lives. So what are we doing with our lives? And if it's not about making a difference, you won't really think it's much good, your life, right? All the excitement and all the interesting stuff happens when you're trying to make the world a better place. Okay. And in a really small way, just like I said, very few people will watch my videos, but the few people who watch it hopefully benefit somewhat, right? So, and of course, the bad side of not doing good things is you really feel bad about yourself. Like you can't even make eye contact with people, and that's a common problem in London. People really struggle with making eye contact, and then you feel like a stranger to everybody, and that is an incredibly lonely feeling, which is causing, the most of the illnesses in society. Loneliness is, as I said, the biggest killer in Western society. And it's largely down to, or to a philosophy that we've accepted because maybe because it's a bit easier, and that is called individualism. Like I could be happy by myself. Yeah, this is very common in even New Age. I think a lot of New Age um, spirituality is can be blamed to that. Blamed for that because they don't talk about doing things for other people. They say happiness is just, you know making yourself happy. And the best advice people give, okay, in this kind of new age Hinduism, supposed Hinduism, and supposed Buddhism, okay, because it's not the real Buddhism. Like, for example, a monk told me that um, people don't seem to realize monk or Buddhists believe in God, but most people would not, most Western Buddhists wouldn't believe in this kind of New Age Buddhism if they realized they had to believe in God as well, right? So that's what I mean by saying that is not real Buddhism, that most Westerners follow. And but what you hear from either this kind of offshoot of Buddhism or whatever you want to call it, from these famous people who I can't remember their names. Yeah, I can't remember. And they just talk about living in the now. Like, what does that mean? It just means like ignoring the past, which includes ignoring your mistakes, okay? The bad things you've done to other people that you won't forgive yourself with unless you do something to make up for it. You just won't, your conscience won't let go of it, right? So it's like, oh, just focus on the now. So what focusing on the now means, not thinking about your responsibilities. It just means like taking care of yourself. That's what it really boils down to. If you look through all the advice about focusing on the now, is all about yourself. Okay, and that's basically the reason why those kind of things are really popular. Those particular self-help books are really popular is because they're selfish, and society is already selfish. But the good news is, I like that things, people like Jordan Peterson are becoming popular because people realize just being selfish doesn't make you happy. Taking responsibility, serving other people, doing good things, That's what makes you happy. And so, although I don't 100% agree with Jordan Peterson and everything, he says some strange things about, he believes that, you know, Adam and Eve were the first people on earth and all sorts of weird things, right? And for example, Jesus Christ should have, um, what did he believe? That he should atone or he should be punished for everybody's sins. It's just a weird idea, right? Okay. But when he sticks to psychology and the facts and logic, yeah, I think, well, yeah, there's so much to be benefited from it, and I certainly learned from that as well. Okay, so I think we're on the last one. Uh, no, wrong one, wrong question. There's the last question. Okay. Okay, why do relationships break down? And again, this is based, I was reminded of this particular question in the movie because the movie is, as many movies are, about relationships, and they're often based on this idea of romantic relationships where they somehow fall in love, and they're so unrealistic because, for example, this guy, the main character that Jim Carrey plays, he's a total nobody, and for some reason somebody falls in love with him on a train. Why would anybody fall in love with a nobody? It just doesn't happen, right? Until the other person is also a complete nobody and incredibly uninteresting. It's just how things work. It's just natural. It's unrealistic to believe anything otherwise. Anyway, so but let's explain it. So, why do relationships break down so often, especially in the materialistic West? Materialistic societies confuse love with lust. So, lust is looking at the outside of a person and ignores the emptiness that people are suffering from inside. Now, if you're empty, i.e., and this is naturally will happen, you will feel empty if you focus on the outside too much. You only have so much energy, and you have to, uh, so you've got 100% energy. If you spend tons of energy on the outside, you've only got a tiny bit of energy to spend on the inside. So it is, you know, you either spend it on your outwards appearance or your inward appearance. You can do a bit of mix match, but that means you have to spend less effort on your outwards appearance. So people who are loved for their outward appearance are going to necessarily be empty in the inside because they have less time for it because they spend all their time on their outward appearance, right? Okay, and those kind of people who are empty in the inside aren't nice people. They cannot be nice people because they haven't worked on the inside. The work to be a good person takes effort, right? So empty people aren't nice people to live with, as emptiness comes from selfishness. So, what is the opposite of? So, how do you feel good about yourself? What is emptiness? Emptiness is just a descriptive feeling word. But where does it come from? It's actually the opposite, I would say, of having meaning in your life when you feel good and that you're doing something important. And how do you find meaning in your life? It's not a complicated thing, actually. Viktor Frankl, I keep quoting, Man's Search for Meaning, he says in that book, all you have to do is listen to your conscience. And many people who talk about this, if you want to do amazing and interesting things, I remember Steven Spielberg, one of the greatest directors of all the so many amazing movies like E.T. and Jaws and I don't know what else, loads of modern movies as well, right? Okay, Schindler's List, I don't know. So he also talks about listening to your conscience. This is not just people should stop thinking of it as some sort of airy fairy stuff. This is stuff that the conscience is something that psychologists have valued for a very long time. So Viktor Frankl says, to go back to that, just listen to your conscience and you'll start knowing what it is that you should do to have meaning in your life. And meaning is incredibly powerful. So Nietzsche talked about, has a phrase: if you have a why, you can get through any how. Basically, it means you can, if you have a why in your life, why you're doing something, you're capable of doing anything. And so there's another fantastic TED talk. These are, talks by experts in different fields of, science and technology and whatever. It is a guy who talks about start with why. So the most successful people start with why they're doing something, okay, and they become more successful than they should be. So there's the Wright brothers in this particular fantastic TED talk, start with why. um, uh, the Wright brothers, they were the ones who basically made the first powered aeroplane or something. Um, and they just had a bicycle shop. They had next to no money, and they were competing with other people who had millions of pounds and had all the best engineers and everything, and they beat them because they believed in why they were doing it, and the other competitors were just after fame and looking important. Yeah. And yeah, and they won. And there's so many examples of that. You don't have to go to the Wright brothers. You could go to, I don't know, think of anybody who's done anything amazing, really. Let's think about Elon Musk again. Easy example. You can see he really believes in what he's doing, because he basically gave up every penny that he earned, the millions that he earned, um, to achieve this stuff. So basically, he's not really getting any sort of monetary success. Even now, he's sold all his houses. He sleeps in other people's houses, uh, um, and he sleeps on inside, what's it called? The his factories and things, right? So um, yeah. So if you should work on the inside, find meaning, listen to your conscience. That's how you don't feel empty. And so coming back, rewinding to the question, why do relationships break down? Because people do not look for people who are good people. If you're, in short, looking for good people rather than falling for the common materialistic urge of just looking for good looking people on the outside, then you're far more likely to find happiness, right? And what you'll find with anybody, really, I say good looking people, a lot of the people who are good looking, they're good looking because, first of all, they're good looking on a newspaper, or sorry, a magazine where they've been airbrushed, and that's not really how they look. So I've seen a lot of really famous people, and they look pretty terrible without makeup, you know. So they're not really that good looking. Um, and then, you know, y- if you think that somebody is, you know, a nice person and you spend time with them, you'll find that your mind adapts to making them good looking. And this is very common. So even if you think about what an office romance is, what does that really mean? If you think about it, you've fallen in love with somebody who happened to be in your office. It's not an accident. What's happened is that you've let your mind wander and think about them over a long period of time until you convince yourself that they're good looking. So the mind does work like that as long as you focus on that particular person. So you can do that with your lifelong partner rather than looking at different people, which again is the weakness of um, materialism or material tendencies. Like, if you are materially minded, what you do is you treat people like material objects, and you say, oh, I've got this person, I've achieved a relationship with them. Okay, but as soon as you get that, just like with an iPhone, you start looking at everything else. You don't control your gaze, as it were, and you let yourself think about lots of other people, and then very quite naturally, you stop liking the person you have, as it were, good relationship with, and you start, wondering at other people, and then you start feeling quite bitter about the relationship you're already in, and which is pretty much all the time. So that's another reason why relationships break down. Um, and of course, people who are feeling empty, and another reason why those relationships with empty people break down. Empty people are always searching for something. Yeah, they're never happy with what they have, and so they're going to search for not you. Basically, they are empty, and they don't have you know, the morals that say, you know what, this is a nice person, and that the person I'm with, I should value. But actually, they probably aren't nice people, because if you found an empty person, that means you're probably empty, because like attracts like. So, short answer is be nice to people, be a good person, and then you attract good people, and then you'll have a decent relationship, because it's easier to have a relationship with a nice person than a horrible person. Anyway, thank you for listening. Hope you've benefited from this show in some small or big way. Do press the like, subscribe, and all that kind of stuff, like other YouTubers say. Hopefully, if you press the like button, maybe, and you think this show was valuable to you, then other people will be kind of guided towards this video according to YouTube, because I think YouTube looks at how many likes the video has. Anyway, do join me next week. Go to the description for all sorts of written versions of all the stuff I had over there, and previous shows and things like that, all for free. Loads and loads of stuff there, to guide you on the path of happiness. Bye. Catch you next week.